Hey there, I'm Alex Kidman and this is the Asus ROG Phone 9 Pro. Let's get into the review. So the first thing to know about the ROG Phone 9 Pro is that it's not one phone. It's actually three. So you've got the basic ROG Phone 9, you've got the ROG Phone 9 Pro, and then you've got the ROG Phone 9 Pro Edition. So the three phones sort of under the same brand. The styling, however, the design remains basically consistent. So what we're talking about here is a 6.78-inch AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080 by 2400 pixels and support, and this is the new bit for this, as distinct from the ROG Phone 8 Pro, for up to 185 Hz refresh rates, no matter which version of the ROG Phone 9 you opt for. Now, it is worth noting that there aren't that many Android games that really make use of 185 Hz in a sensible way. There are games that support it, for sure. They don't break under 185 Hz, but there's not a whole heaping lot that actually need it, where you're actually going to see a huge visual difference or a huge gameplay difference at this point in time. It's more kind of future-proofing than anything else. I should also point out some older Android games that actually use the screen refresh rate as part of their clock cycles may actually break or just run far too fast under 185 Hz, but this is switchable. You can fix for this if you do find it happening. The ROG Phone 9 Pro, which is what I'm testing here, comes just in the one color, Phantom Black, and well, it sure is black. The design is kind of boxy, and really the only standout thing is the slight cutout on the rear camera bump. It's a pretty chunky camera bump too. I don't like the cutout. It tends to just catch on my jeans when I'm taking it out of my pocket. It's not great. You do, with the Pro Edition version that I have tested, also get protective cases for the phone, and you get their Aero Cooler attachment. And this plugs in to the USB-C port on the side. There's also a USB-C port on the base, although it's offset from the middle, which could have an impact on some other accessories you might want to use with this phone, because most phones tend to put the power socket right in the bottom middle of the phone. This one does not do that. Asus has had this for a while. It's to do with a bunch of their accessories. If you get the regular ROG Phone 9 or you just get the ROG Phone 9 Pro, you don't get the Aero Cooler with it, however, but that can be purchased separately if that's a thing that you want after the fact. At 163.8 by 77 by 8.9 millimeters and at 227 grams, this is quite a bulky phone, even more so, obviously, if you put the cooler onto it. It's kind of awkward if the phone rings while you've got the cooler installed. There's a kind of an Nokia N-Gage side talking vibe thing happening, and I know I'm dating myself with that reference, but this is a big unit to be using in that style. But then this is a phone really prominently sold as a gaming phone first and foremost. The big party piece for the ROG Phone 9 Pro is the Anime Vision display on the back. Now, the 8 Pro had that, but they have upscaled it here with a higher resolution display and a handful of, well, they're games that you can play on the back of the screen using the air triggers. These are the pressure-sensitive sides of the phone for control. You know that browser game in Chrome you can play if you don't have a network connection where you're the dinosaur jumping the cactuses? Well, there's a version of that there, along with Simple Snake, Breakout, and Space Invaders style games. And look, they're kind of cute, I suppose, but they're nothing I'd really waste a lot of time on. So it's a kind of cute party piece. You can use it for notifications and other things as well. It's not just a little gaming portal. But I think apart from the show-off factor for it, it's not exactly a must-have feature. One unusual feature that you totally do not find in premium phones at this price point is that this still has a 3.5mm headphone jack, if you preferred the wired headphone look. Nice to see, really. In terms of durability, it's rated at IP68 for water and dust ingress, and no, I haven't destroyed it or particularly put it through harsh tests. I've got a whole video about why so many of the YouTube tests that do that are pretty poor, which you can check out at your leisure. On the camera front, well, the question that the ROG Phone 9 Pro poses is, well, does anyone buy a gaming phone looking for top-end photography features? I really suspect they don't. And the issue here really is that the ROG Phone 9 Pro is a premium price device, and for that kind of money, you can get the best smartphone cameras going around. And I'm talking here of phones like the S25 Ultra or the iPhone 16 Pro Max at the time of recording. And the issue here is you've got to temper your expectations in terms of what you're getting out of the ROG Phone 9 Pro. In straight camera hardware terms, what we're talking about here is a 50 megapixel wide sensor, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and 32 megapixel 3x optical zoom telephoto camera with gimbal stabilization, which has been slightly tweaked and upgraded over the 8 Pro. Now, that's not a bad recipe for a camera phone, but this does shoot a little below its premium price stablemates in terms of speed of shot, exposure. You can still get perfectly good photos out of that, but you can get perfectly good photos out of a $500 phone these days. So this is an area where, while I feel like ASUS probably could have done a little bit more, they probably don't need to. I don't think too many people looking to buy a gaming phone are going to be too fussed about not having the best cameras. But if you do want the best cameras, this isn't the phone you should buy. So as I mentioned before, there's 3 phones that are the ROG Phone 9. There's the baseline version, just the ROG Phone 9. There's the ROG Phone 9 Pro and the ROG Phone 9 Pro Edition. Technically, what ASUS has loaned me for review is the ROG Phone 9 Pro Edition. And the difference between those is largely one of storage and RAM. So the Pro Edition is the top of the line, and that ships with 1 terabyte of included storage and 24 gig of RAM. The 9 Pro has 512 gig of fixed storage and 16 gig of RAM. For either model, you'll find the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite processor under the hood, running ASUS's reskinned version of Android 15. Slightly confusingly though, while I'm testing what is clearly the Pro edition of the phone, if I look in the phone's About Me settings, well, it actually says it's just the 9 Pro. Yeah, there's some weird branding and naming going on here. I don't quite get why the Pro edition is the Pro edition, just make it the higher storage version of the same phone. Now, this is ultimately pitched as a gaming phone, and the inclusion of the Snapdragon 8 Elite does give it plenty of power to play with. However, it's not alone in that space, so I was curious to see how it compare against other phones. So first of all, I ran it through Geekbench 6's CPU test. Here's how it compares. Now, this is a solid result for the ROG Phone 9 Pro, though Samsung's optimizations around its slightly tweaked Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy processors do give them a slight performance edge here. And this is a story that repeats itself looking at GPU performance by way of 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme. And all of this does add up to a nicely powerful phone that's very well and truly capable of running even the most demanding Android gaming titles very nicely indeed. Whilst it's good for gaming, whether you're using the air triggers, whether you're using the buttons on the back of the Aero Cooler, if you've got your own gaming controller, or if you just like touch inputs, all of that is really, really good. What's slightly less good is ASUS's commitment to software updates, because it's well behind the pace here. You get only 2 operating system updates and 5 years of security updates. And Samsung's the obvious comparison point here. You get 7 years of both with its phones. Google does the same. While Apple never really commits to how long it's doing, it sure as heck does more than 2 OS upgrades for a brand new phone. And this is an area I really wish ASUS was doing more with. Now, gaming is the play here, quite literally, and ASUS provides 2 key software applications for handling your gaming duties. Existing Republic of Gamers fans will probably be familiar with Armoury Crate as gaming management software, but alongside that sits ASUS's gaming overlay software, Game Genie. Now, it's a brief aside, but am I the only one when I hear the words Game Genie that thinks of, well, this?
Game over? No way! 'Cause we got Game Genie!
It can't be just me, right? That aside, unlike its ancient predecessor, Game Genie isn't cheating software, but instead it's optimization software for setting features that will work better under a gaming load. Now, that's not unique to gaming phones. A lot of phones have this kind of gaming optimization built in, and Game Genie gets the job done. It's a little bit awkward to actually get it to invoke. You've got to do this swiping diagonal gesture that doesn't always take and sometimes flicks you out of the application you're trying to load. It can be a little bit of a nuisance, but it's functional enough, I suppose. Now, the reason why the Pro Edition comes with the Aero Cooler and why that USB port is there on the side, so you could clip the Aero Cooler on if you bought it separately, is because this is a phone that can get fairly hot. Now, that's not the fault of the phone, that's the fact that if you run higher-end Android games, and if you're not going to run higher-end Android games, why are you even looking at this phone? But when you do run those higher-end games, yes, you generate a bit of heat, and the Aero Cooler can affect that. It can work fairly well for keeping the temperature under control, with obviously a certain cost to the battery life. As I mentioned before, the one downside here is that it is kind of bulky, and if you are just using it as a cooler, if you don't need those buttons, it can be a slightly awkward thing to hold. On the battery front, the larger size of the ROG Phone 9 Pro allows ASUS to stuff in just a few more battery cells into its frame than your regular Android phone with its typically regular these days 5,000 mAh battery. Instead, you get 5,800 mAh. But of course, as they always say, it's not the size that counts, it's what you can do with it. And here, well, it does obviously depend on the games that you're going to play. But to give myself a baseline, I first of all ran it through my considerably softer YouTube 3-hour battery test to see how it would compare against other flagship phones. Now, while it sits at the bottom of this table, those aren't automatically terrible figures. Any phone that can manage above 90% battery life for that first hour's test is a phone that absolutely can last 100 days of moderate, regular everyday usage. But again, I don't think anyone's buying this to be a regular everyday phone. And the thing here is that, yes, if you are running those higher-end games, the battery will run down. If you don't have the aero cooler on, it'll run down a bit more. You can tweak around this a bit to try and eke out a bit of battery life, but absolutely, this is a phone that can run flat within a day pretty easily if you're a very keen gamer. One interesting note for the ROG Phone 9 Pro is that it's just about the only premium flagship phone sold in Australia today that still comes with an included charger in the box. It's a decent 65-watt USB-C charger. You get it in both the Pro and Pro Edition boxes, and it recharges nice and fast. If you're more the wireless charging type, it does support for Qi charging, although it's only Qi 1, not Qi 2, so 15-watt maximum, but that, of course, will charge the phone a great deal slower. So should you buy the ROG Phone 9 Pro? Well, look, this is a seriously expensive phone, and unless you are very, very keen on gaming specifically on Android phones, I can't see it as a must-buy for the general market. Even though ASUS has restyled its ROG phones in recent years to make them more appealing to the mainstream, this is still a gaming phone first and foremost, and you've got to be very, very dedicated and need those kinds of features every day for this to make a great deal of sense. I would say in this space that the S25 Ultra is still the better buy. It has better cameras, its battery endurance is just that little bit better, and you're definitely getting more in the way of software and security updates than you are with ASUS. But this is certainly a decent option, and as we know with Android phones, the price on this thing is likely to drop over time. At its original asking price here in Australia, it's a bit of a hard sell to most, I feel. Once that price starts dropping, however, it could be a really nice little pickup.